Hello, everyone. Welcome to our STEPP program, Class 5. My name is Dawn Hendershot. I'm the Community Manager here at Family Promise Sussex County, and I am going to pull up the screen now. Joining us, we have Randy Yang, and he is live on a Teams meeting, so let me see if I can get that screen shared and get him pulled up. Okay, again, so this is Stabilizing Tenancy Eviction Prevention Program, Course 5, presented by Family Promise of Sussex County. Thank you for joining us today. Disclaimer right from the beginning, we just want to reiterate, as always, in any of these classes, that Family Promise of Sussex County does not provide legal services. This series is presented to deliver information about landlord and tenant law so that participants can better understand their rights and responsibilities. So for specific questions, you should always seek advice of legal counsel. And just moving along on our timeline, so we've already had 4 classes in this series, and today is our 5th class, and we're going to be speaking on habitability. And you'll notice, just as a heads up, that for next week, we are taking a break from this 10-class series, and the next one will be October 22nd on lease termination. If you will be missing the class on Tuesdays, we have our eviction only specific to tenants on October 15th. So next Tuesday, we will still be holding a class at 5:30. It just will not be as part of this series. It's going to instead be strictly on the eviction from the tenant side. So it's another great class. We hope you can join us. But if you're just following along in the series, our next class will be October 22nd. So moving forward, again, my name is Dawn Hendershot. I'm the Community Manager here at Family Promise. And joining us today, we have Randy Yang. He's a staff attorney at Legal Services of Northwest New Jersey. And he'll be speaking to you on the meat and potatoes of the habitability. So I will pass the baton over to him.
Thank you, Don. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Randy, and I am an attorney, and I do housing and consumer law. This slide is about your right to safe and decent housing. So in New Jersey, there is something called the warrant of habitability, and it means that landlords have a legal obligation to maintain rental properties in a safe and decent condition. And, as a tenant, you probably come across the issue where you have a problem with your apartment or your house, and you're not sure if maybe the landlord should be responsible for repairing the issue. So under the warrant of habitability, the landlords do have a legal obligation to fix the issue if it is one that may affect your safety and your health. So that's the first question. Does the issue affect your safety and well-being? And these are just 4 examples. They are, for example, you don't have hot water or the water isn't running. Maybe your AC is not working in the summer, or you don't have heat in the winter. Your door doesn't lock, or your window does not close. And obviously that presents a security issue. And generally speaking, your landlord may have an obligation to fix it if some of your appliances do not work. The best example is the fridge is broken. Obviously, you want to preserve your food and you don't want it to go bad. And if the fridge breaks, your landlord would have the responsibility to fix it. Now, these are just examples, but of course, I'm sure there are many other issues that have come up. And if you're not sure, another resort that you can do is call your local town inspector or health board. And sometimes you can ask someone to send an inspector, come to your apartment, take a look, and they will tell you whether this is, a matter of safety and health, and whether or not your landlord may have a responsibility to fix it. And if it's serious enough, they may even issue a citation to your landlord. Now, the last bullet says that the landlord has no obligation to fix the problem if it was the tenant who recklessly or negligently caused the problem. Okay, if that's the case, then you as a tenant would be responsible for fixing it. But if it is something where it is, you lived in the apartment for a couple of years and it's just reasonable wear and tear from, just normal use, and say the water heater breaks, which happens, they typically last 10 to 15 years. If it breaks, your landlord is responsible for fixing, otherwise you're not gonna have hot water. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so this slide is about what to do if, the landlord, you have an issue that does affect your safety and well-being, and the landlord is not fixing the issue. So we're gonna go over the steps of what you need to do. The very first thing you need to do, probably most obviously, you need to tell your landlord, notify your landlord of the problem, and you want to put it in writing. Very often nowadays, my clients communicate with their landlord either via text or they email the apartment manager. But you can also, if you want, write a letter and send it certified. Of course, that's going to take a little bit longer. But generally speaking, if it becomes a dispute that shows up in court, a text or an email will suffice to show that you gave your landlord notice that, something isn't working. For example, hot water stopped working. Okay, so then you've given your landlord notice. Now the next thing you need to do is the landlord is allowed a reasonable amount of time to fix the issue. Okay, Don, thanks. Go ahead and click that again. Okay, so now let's say after a reasonable amount of time, the landlord does not fix the issue. There are two remedies you have. Okay, the first one is you can repair and deduct, which means that you pay for a professional to come to your apartment or house and fix it themselves, and then you pay for that service, and then you subtract that expense from next month's rent. Now, if you do this, you want to keep the receipts. Okay, that's really important because you need to show proof that the difference between what you paid in rent and what you're supposed to pay is due to the expense that you undertook to fix the problem. Secondly, the expense must be reasonable. Okay, so obviously you don't want to spend too much on what I'm doing hypotheticals here, but that's something that could have been cheaper, right? So just make sure it is a reasonable expense. Now, if you're dealing with the issue in which you don't have the means to pay someone to fix it, then you can do the second option, which is withholding of rent. Now, withholding rent is a serious escalation. Okay, so if you go this route, you need to make sure you do it correctly. Okay, and so I'm going to go over these next 4 bullets. First thing is you must give your landlord another notice that you're withholding rent. So you've already given your landlord the first notice about the problem, right? You let your landlord have a reasonable amount of time to fix it. He or she didn't fix it. Now you're giving the second notice saying, all right, because you haven't fixed it, I'm going to withhold the next month's rent and possibly any others until you do repair the issue. The second bullet says you must set aside the rent money, don't spend it. So in other words, let's say your rent $1,500 a month. Okay, you've withheld it, and then suddenly your landlord fixes the problem. Well, now you've got to very quickly pay your landlord that $1,500. And maybe that sounds obvious, but this happens so often where we have a client who withheld rent for like a month or two, even longer, and then life got in the way and they had to take care of an emergency expense and they spent all that money they withheld. Now their landlord is suing them for not paying rent, and they don't have the money set aside, right, to make an argument as to why they didn't pay for rent. And so that leads directly to my third issue, which is maybe you've set aside the money, right, and you haven't paid the rent, and the landlord, instead of fixing the issue, decides to sue you to evict you for the unpaid rent. So when that happens, right, the dispute has now gone over to the courts for them to adjudicate. The court is only going to hear your argument that you withheld rent because your landlord refused to fix the issue. They will only hear your argument if you have that money set aside. The court is going to ask you to deposit the money that you should have paid to your landlord into the court. Okay. And if you don't have the money because, like I said, you spent it on an emergency expense, the court is going to treat this eviction suit as a standard non-payment and you are going to immediately lose because you don't have that money set aside. But if you did have that money set aside, the court's then going to hold, and this is the last bullet, the court's going to hold what's called a Marini hearing to determine proper rent. And this is where, your landlord is going to testify, as to why they did or didn't fix the problem. And then you as the tenant are going to testify as to, why this issue affected your safety and well-being. The judge is going to hear both testimonies, and then they're going to make a decision as to what your rent should have been during the time in which this issue was, active, right? So that's called rent abatement. The judge might say, okay, because you didn't have hot water for the entire month of September, instead of paying your normal rent of $1,500, I'm going to require you to only have to pay, something like $1,300 or $1,200, right? That's called rent abatement. But just one aside, when this goes to Marini hearing, typically the judge will only reduce the rent by not as much as you would think. It's usually like 10 to 20%. Okay, so as serious as the issue you may have, if you're still living there but you didn't have hot water, you didn't have AC, you're not going to get something like a 50% abatement. It's going to be somewhere around 10 to 15, maybe 20%. Okay. But the most important thing is you have to have that money set aside. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so the advice that I just gave is slightly different if you are a tenant with a Section 8 voucher. In other words, your rent is subsidized with a voucher. So the first step is the same. Of course, you have to notify your landlord of the issue. And if the landlord does not repair within a reasonable amount of time, you must then notify the housing agency that issued your voucher. Next bullet, please. You can just click through it. Yeah. Okay. So what happens then is the housing agency will do an inspection, and if the issue is a serious one, they will fail the property, and then they will allow your landlord 30 days to remedy the issue. And if the landlord still does not repair, the housing agency will cease their portion of payments to the landlord, and then they may allow you as a tenant to transfer your Section 8 voucher to a new property. In other words, you're moving to a new place. Now, the biggest difference between you and a market rent paying tenant is that you as a Section 8 voucher holder must continue to pay your share of the rent, okay? So you're not allowed to withhold your rents. You're not allowed to repair and deduct your rent. You have to continue paying your share of the rent, and what you're going to do is have the housing agency do all the hard work of putting pressure on your landlord to fix the issue, and they're the ones that are going to withhold the rent. But unfortunately for you, you have to continue paying your share, and you want to follow these rules because obviously a voucher is really important. They're hard to get, and it really helps keep housing affordable. So it's really important that if you're a housing voucher that and you come across this issue, that you follow the rules accordingly. Next slide, please. Okay, so now we're going to start talking about bed bugs. Not a very pleasant issue. I hope you've never dealt with bed bugs. I have when I was younger, and it was a nightmare and so hard to get rid of. Okay, so if this happens to you, here are kind of the general rules. All right. Unless a landlord can prove that a specific tenant has caused a bed bug infestation, it is the duty of a landlord of a multi-dwelling unit to fix the problem. And generally speaking, it also applies to single-family homes, okay? So if you have landlords, the first thing you want to do is similar to what we talked about, inform your landlord in writing as soon as bed bugs are found, all right? And the previous slides I went over, the same rules apply. Landlords are allowed a reasonable amount of time to fix it. If they don't, you could withhold the rent or you could pay deduct as yourself. Now, you can seek legal advice if, first bullet, the landlord tries to add to the lease that you will be responsible for getting rid of the bed bugs. That isn't necessarily the case because sometimes you're not the one responsible for bringing the bed bugs in. Sometimes you don't know where it comes from, but it could be from a lot of people, right? Not just you. Second bullet, landlord wants you to pay to get rid of bed bugs. Again, unless the landlord can specifically prove that it was you that recklessly brought it in, the landlord has a duty to remedy the issue. Third bullet, landlord refuses to do anything to get rid of bed bugs. I'm going to refer back to the previous slide regarding, you pay and deduct yourself or you withhold rent. And fourth bullet, landlord says he's going to evict you or sue you because of bed bugs. So if you weren't the one that recklessly brought in the bed bugs, a landlord, any landlord can sue their tenant, right, for eviction on any number of causes. It would be too much to go into in this presentation, but if you do get sued and the landlord is saying it's because you brought in bed bugs, well, then your landlord has a burden of proof to establish that in court, okay? And I'm not going to go into details, but basically you should call an office like ours, Legal Services of Northwest Jersey, if this is an issue, if you've been sued regardless of what the grounds are, okay? And then we can discuss your case. And then finally, exterminator states that you must throw away furniture belongings that you can't replace. This could be the case. It is possible that, I speak from personal experience where you kind of have to get rid of some things, especially like fabric, things that have fabric, like couches. But I think you should fall back to calling legal services or a lawyer and getting advice on what to do if that's the case. Okay, heat. So previously I talked about, if you don't have heat in the winter or AC in the summer, the heat rules in this state are that between October 1st and May 1st, rental temperatures must be at least 68 degrees between 6 a.m. and 11 p.m. and 65 degrees between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. And if you think that your heater is not working and it's way too cold, it drops below those temperatures during those times, you can call your city house inspector or board of health, and they're the ones that enforce the heat requirements. And again, they will bring an inspector to your apartment or your home. They will, take a temperature gauge of your house, and if it falls below those temperatures, they could issue a citation to your landlord. Your landlord is responsible for giving you heat. Okay, lead. So lead paint was used in most buildings that were built prior to 1978. Okay, and they can be found in all sorts of places, on the interior, the exterior. They could even be in the dirt surrounding a house, a property. And landlords are prohibited from using lead paints and are required to remove or cover any inside or outside the home. Now, if you're living in an old house, you might have lead in the paint, and it usually is not a problem unless that paint starts to chip and become, fine dust. That's when it can be a serious issue. So if you have young children, this is especially important because it is very harmful for young children and all children under ages. And I believe New Jersey law says that all children under age of 6 need to be tested for lead regardless. And if your child has elevated levels of lead, then the health department, it's right, I'm sorry, that's the next bullet. If a child or any family member tests with a high blood lead level, you need to call the health department. I think the health department will do this as well automatically, and ask to have your home inspected immediately. And then what they're going to do is they're going to check the interior, the exterior. They'll even check the dirt to see if there's lead. And the same rules as I went over apply here, which is, you need to tell your landlord to fix the issue. If within a reasonable time the landlord doesn't, you can pay and deduct yourself, or you can withhold rent. Of course, you can always call legal services if you seek further advice, and because your landlord is not, taking proper action to fix it. Okay, so I guess that was kind of a lot. Went through it kind of quickly, possibly. That's a very general overview, but oftentimes when I do this presentation, people have very specific questions. So please, if you have questions, please ask. I will be around at least till 7, I think I was supposed to be here. So happy to answer any questions you have.
All right, so I'm going to check. Little feedback there. Check the live stream. See if we have any questions in the chat. So it doesn't look like we have any. As always, you can email Family Promise if you do think of any questions or if you attend any additional sessions. We'd be happy to forward them on to Randy and see if we can get some answers for you. Thank you so much, Randy, for your time today and your insight into this very important and sometimes disgusting issue with the bed bugs, but it's important, and it's great to have somebody who deals with this on a daily basis to spread some basic information. So we really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. And can I do a real quick plug for our office?
Of course, please do.
So, well, first of all, thank you to your organization. You've helped so many of our clients with, rental assistance, and I cannot tell you how grateful we are to have a partner like you guys. My office, Legal Services of Northwest Jersey, we offer free legal services. So if there's anybody, watching this and you have what you think is a legal dispute or an issue, we do more than just housing law. We do consumer law. So maybe you can sue for credit card debt. We need help filing bankruptcy. We can help with that. We have family law. So oftentimes we help clients with divorces or restraining orders or changing up child support or custody arrangements. We also have employment law lawyers. So maybe you're dealing with the issue with your employer. We also even do wills and estates. So maybe you need help with writing a health directive or doing writing a will. I'm sure I'm leaving something out. And of course, housing. So if you've been sued for eviction or you're dealing with a habitability issue like we just talked about, you should please give us a call. And if you email Dawn has my contact information. You can reach out to me directly, or you can call our office and see if you qualify. Typically, generally speaking, to qualify for our free legal services, you have to be below a certain income. But we have many grants that allow us to help certain populations like veterans or people who are over 65. And finally, we cover the areas, the counties of Morris, Somerset, Sussex, Warren, and Hunterdon. Okay, I know that was a long plug. Sorry. Thank you very much, Dawn.
No, that's wonderful. Again, great information. And important populations that could definitely use some of those services, and it's great to know that that option is out there. So again, we really appreciate having you today, Randy, and I'll go ahead and end the stream there then. So thank you all and have a wonderful night.